internal table and external table. So anybody has any question on that? Has anyone tried and got any difficulty, right? How to create internal, external, drop table and okay, so today I will be showing the partition thing, okay, in the Hive. Okay, so there's a partitioning, what is a partitioning concept, and the other thing is in the part um, how to use partition, right? Basically, what is the purpose of the partition? So nobody has questions? Okay, I will share you this all like text file. These are the different concepts related, all like practical things. Okay. The last time we did internal table and external table things, right? So how to create a tables. So today we will be doing practical for partitioning and bucketing. Okay. So how to create a partition specifically in the partitioning. Okay. So first thing is before understanding partition, right? Okay. Um, when we have any SQL, right, we write a SQL, right, query in the Hive, okay, on the table, like select star from table. So when I write a query, select star from table, so it is reading the data, entire table data, because I'm using a star, right, and I'm saying all the columns. So this star we can replace with the column names, right? But we are not using any where clause. I'm not saying how many record I want to read, like limit 10. Okay. So it means it will read all the records, right? But suppose if I'm giving us some where condition, I say select star from table where city equal to C1, like some city name is there. So what it means? It is basically from this table, suppose this table is the employee table, employee table, and this employee table has ID is there, name is there, age is there, city is there, country is there. So these are the columns are there. So when I say city C1, what it will basically do, it will check every column value, every the city column value and check with the C1. So wherever it find the city is C1, it will get that data. So it is doing a complete table scan, right? Every record is taking. Suppose I say the select star from table, I have 100 records, right? I have 100 records. So all 100 records I have to check. I cannot say without checking, I can know whether the city is a C1 or not. I cannot know, right? I have to check each and every. So how many times I have to check? 100 times I have to check for 100 records. But suppose if I say instead of this 100, okay, 1 million records are there, or like 10 lakhs records, like there is a very big, like huge amount of data are there in the table. Okay. So if I say if this millions of data records are there and you are trying to find on the city column value, so it will taking a lot of time. So it is a overhead, right? So the partition concept comes in picture when you are having a use table and you have to check your data, right? You have to check on the data and based on the column value, you have to find the partition and get the data, right? So partition is basically a logical division of the data. Logical division of the data is distributed, okay, in the different machines, right? Okay. And I say like a logical division of data. So these partitions are already pre-prepared partitions, right? Because I can say, like I have 10 partitions, like, okay. So if I have 10 different cities data is there. So how many partitions should we create ideally? If 10 cities data is repeated data is there. So 10 cities data is there. So 10 partitions will be there. So table size is same, but it is divide the entire like number of record into 10 different group, so that whenever you say the query select C1, select star from table C1, so you will get the data from the C1 partition. So you will get data from C1 partition directly. Okay, there is no need to check anything, because this data is already prepared based on the partition. But you should know which column you have to use partition, because every column cannot be partition column. You cannot say ID is a partition column, name is a partition. No, you will make it the very frequently used column as a partition column, like mostly city, country, right? Or like you have an online transaction data is there, like debit card, credit card. So you want to find how many users are using the debit card, how many users are using credit card, right? This kind of things you can find through the partitions, right? So you can have the partition column. So partition column is always selected based on the repeated data in the column. Okay. So that those columns you will be using partition column. So when you are saying select star from table where city, so you will get the data from directly C1 partition. And when you have the city C2, then it will be taken from the partition C2. So you can think of, rather than scanning the whole number of records, you are getting directly data from the partition. So that is really too fast for the improving the performance. The performance of the query will be very, very fast, right? Because it is getting the data from the partition. Now, there are the two types of partitioning. One is a static partitioning, and second one is a dynamic partition. Okay. Now we understand what is a static, what is a dynamic. So static is like when I say I have in my column just one or two columns are there. Okay, like repeated values. My values are repeated. Like just take an example of gender column. So gender, obviously the male female case will be there. So either male or female. So I want to do partitioning either male or female, like I want to create a two partitions, right? So I can go for, so static. So criteria for static is when the less number of partitions are there, you should use the static. Why? Because static partitioning, you are loading data into partition table. Actually, if you have some source table you have, so the source table, there is no partition column, because you have to define some column in the source table, some partition column, and create a new partition table. So what you have to do? You have to create a new table as partition table. And this partition table, one column will be partitioned by column name. So this column logically divide the data. So basically, why I'm saying is here, static partition, you are loading the data into partition table manually. So if you have less partition, it will be good, right? But suppose you have 100 cities data. So one by one, you are loading 100 cities data. That is no use of using static. For that scenario, when you are not sure, right, how many repeated columns, repeated values are there in the column, we go for dynamic. So dynamic partition is automatically loaded data into number of partitions based on the number of different values, different repeated values in the column. So different repeated, doing something repeated values in the column. So when I'm not sure like how many columns values repeated are there, I can go for dynamic. Generally, the case is like date partition, or like I say city, country, like this kind of data, which is more number of time repeated, because we cannot make sure like, okay, it is very, very less. Okay. So static partition, you have to load data manually, and dynamic partition, you don't need to do anything. The partition table automatically created. The data is automatically loaded in the partition table. Partition table you have to create in both the cases. That is the same. But static case, you have to load the data. But in case of dynamic partitioning, the data is loaded automatically based on the different repeated values in the column. Okay. So I show you the example. First, we'll see that static partitioning. And this partitioning now we will use the load data local path. You've seen the last time load data local path. Right? But now we are not loading the data, load data local in path, load data local in path command, and in path command, and we are defining some path. But this time we are loading the data in partitions. We are not talking about the loading data into table. So loading data into table is similar to loading data into partition, but we have to specify into table and partition name. So like this, I will say my partition is city equal to C1. So static case, I will do like this way, I will load the data. Okay. Is it clear? The concept is clear. What is partitioning? And one more thing is static partition is a default partitioning that is automatically supported by the Hive. Static partitioning is the default partitioning, and dynamic partitioning, we need to configure some property, configure some Hive property to enable. So by default, it will not be enabled. Okay. So this is the same thing. You can go through it, this concept thing, like non-partition table, partitioning, right? Okay. Partition table. So whenever we are creating a partition table, we have to use the partition by clause, right? Something like partition by. So here I'm doing a partition by department name. So what is my data in the table? Department number, employee name, and salary. But I'm doing the partition on the department, right? Department D1 is there, D2 is there, or say like some department is HR is there, admin is there, some name of the department is there. Okay. So first thing is I'm creating a one partition table. Okay. And here is whenever we create a table in Hive, right, row format delimited, field terminated by comma, and lines terminated by the /n. So what is this meaning? Right, whatever data I'm giving to the Hive as a file, that data is a comma delimited data. Okay. So I'm creating a table, partition table I'm creating. Okay. So same example we can use with the dynamic or static, depend on like if the number of partitions are more, so then we will choose the dynamic partition option. And the same example, like suppose if I have less partition. So if I want to use the same example with the gender, right? If I say all employee data I have, employee ID, employee name, employee salary, and I have a one partition column is gender. Okay. So in that scenario, I can go with like static partition. Okay. Okay. So first thing is, okay, take this. Everything I can prepare manually. Okay. What I want to do. Okay. The first thing is, or I should take it my own example. My example is created, please. Okay. So this is like a static partition. So first I'm going to create a table. Okay. And I'm saying that my table is a student one two underscore static STAT. And there is a student name, father name, and percentage. And the partition column I'm doing section. So suppose I say for first grade, two section are there, section A, section B, right? Okay. So first I'm going to create a partition table. This is a command to create a partition table. So what is the difference is coming when the partition table or normal table? Only this particular line I'm adding. Partition by the partition column name and type. Okay. So this particular command will create a partition table. Okay. So first of all, I start the hive. I open one input file directory. Okay, so that I will use it those file to load the data. Okay, so I create here. I will create the files. Okay, so first I will see the databases. So databases. The hive is not properly stopped. This kind of error. At any system exception, the first Rm minus Rf matters to DB you delete. It may delete the data, whatever your tables data. Interesting. So after that, we have to initialize the derby. Again, we have to start the we have to start. Okay. Now I will create my table. What we- So this is my table command. So I'm going to create a table. I mean, right now it's not, it's a static or dynamic. The command is same. It's not a matter with the table name, right? So this table creation command, this partition table creation command is the same for static dynamic. Is not a type of partitioning basically for this table. Okay. So this is a partition table. Okay. Once this table is created, now next is I have to prepare a two input file, one for section A and one for section B. Okay. The section A file, I have a data for student name, father name, and percentage. Okay. And student B, we have the second file, we have this data. Okay. So I want to create this file. Just I copy this data. So creating this data in my input directory folder. Okay. So what I'm doing here in the hive input file, here I'm creating a input file. I say section underscore A, right? This is my file. Okay, so I will create a file. Control D. Okay. Same way, I will create another file. Section B. Section A means this is a section A data. Because here is no section is coming, but I know this section A data, right? Because my file name is the section A. Okay. So when I will load the data, I will load in the section A partition. So this entire data will go to partition of the section A. Another section B file I'm creating, there I will load the data of B section. This is the B section data. Okay. So here is nothing A or B is there in this data. Okay. But logically, I know this is the section A data and this is the section B data. Okay. So I created two files. Now I told you like static partition, I have to load the data manually in the section. Okay. So what I'm doing here, my hive table command. Okay. Here I'm saying section A. So my column name is a section. Okay. And what is my file name? I have to change here my file. My file location. Here is my file. My file location. Hive input file. Hive input file. Hive input file. And file name I created section A into table, same table. Partition name I'm giving section A. Okay, just I'm assuming it. My section name is A. Okay, so this you can give corresponding section file. Corresponding file you can define your partition name. This is a partition name. Okay, so I enter the data. Okay, so here data local class. Okay. Sometimes whenever you're copy pasting this single code you change. Otherwise, it will give the error. Okay. Can you see the data is loaded? Same thing I will do for the section B. So simply what I need to do, I just change this section B because my second file name is section B and the partition name is I want to keep it with section B name, right? So I loaded the data. Okay. Now my both the partitions are loaded. Now if I do query my partition table, my table name is a student 1 2 underscore static, and now I see all the data. Okay. So I'm just looking at all the data. If I'm using still I'm not using the where clause, right? So I'm not getting the data from the partition, right? Because entire data is coming. But when I use where clause, and I say my section name is A, when I say my section name is A, so this is the data is coming from the partition. It will be coming faster. When I say section B, so my data will be coming from the partition. So this is very small data. You will not see the much difference in the time, right? But when the data is large, right? So you will see this data is directly coming from the partition. So this is the case of static partition where my data is directly coming from the partition. But here is a one drawback, right? Because static partition, I'm loading the data. Okay. But suppose if the partitions are more, right? Like 10 partition, 15 partitions, right? So I have to do every time load data command, right? Load data, like this every time I have to do. So for this thing, if I don't want to do, I can go for the dynamic part. Okay. So this example, this is the static partitions I'm doing, but there is a static partition from table to table I can do. Because if I want to load the data from the file, but suppose my data is not in the file, my data is there in the some source table. So my one source table is there. In that source table, my data is there, but still you have to load the data one by one only. Okay. That thing will not be changed. Like this is also static partition, right? But this example is table to table partition. Like you are here is file, you have data and loading the data into target table. Okay. So different file you need. But suppose my data is not in different file. My data is in one single table. Like I have my name, father name, percentage, and section. So all data in a one source file. Okay. So this file, I can write the data into my target table, but not in one go, right? Because I have, when I'm using static partition, so I have to write the data different insert into command. So I will say in my insert into table command, like this partition, load the data from this source table, where clause. So A data will go to the A partition. B table data, like B column, right? B column, right? Section B data from the source table go to the, so only difference is here, instead of the data is in different source file, you have data in a one single table, but ultimately here also you are doing multiple time insert. Okay. This thing will be improved in the dynamic partition. One time you will create a table, you will enable the properties, and one single insert command. Here you can see A or B I am not giving. Am I giving A or B, section A or B? No, right? Just I'm giving section, and I'm giving a source table. This is my source table. Okay. So when I'm giving a source table and I'm saying target table is my partition is a section, everything is loaded in a one single command. But we need to enable this configuration for that. So that's advantage of using the dynamic. Okay. Can anyone ask any question anyone has? Hmm. So three ways are there, two for static and one for dynamic. one for dynamic. So two static means one is file to table, table to table, and dynamic is always table to table. Okay, because there is no case for the file to table, because in case of dynamic, our table has data, the source table, and we will load the data from source table to target table, okay, in the partition table. Okay,
So I have one quick question.
Yeah.
So yeah, if we go one step back on the static loading, static partition. So if you are using this load data command, right, sir, when mentioning that section A or section B, make sure that happen. So if you not give any session, like if it is, if you didn't mention anything like session, will that be an error, or else the data will be get loaded and gives us like an empty value in the column?
Who are saying I'm not giving, I'm giving
No,
10
no.
here.
If a person is loading in, like, wants to load the data into the table but doesn't know the, like, to give that
You
partition
are
column.
saying partition
Yeah,
you will
yeah,
not give, right? You will not give
yeah.
normal load data locally.
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me this table, this
Mm-hmm.
target table is a what type? Partition table, right?
Partition type, yes.
So I understanding, I will easily identify, because what is a target table, what is a type of table? It's a partition table or normal table. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You are trying in partition table and you are trying the data to load entire table. So
Mm-hmm.
partition table, there is no concept of loading entire data, because data will definitely load partition by partition, right? When partition is not there,
Okay.
the data will be loaded in entire table. But when the
Uh-huh.
partition comes in picture, you can't load the entire data, because entire data is no sense, right? Okay, let's see what it does. Okay. So your what will happen, whatever this data will go as complete data in a whole table. It will not be related to the partition. If you have not specified partition, so it is not giving error, right? It is not giving error.
Uh-huh.
But what is the sense here? It is understanding you are giving partition table, but it will load the data as a whole data. That data is not related to any partition. So when you do select star from table where partition something you do, so you will, okay, now you do the query, which, okay, so you are, see, first of all, how much total data you have. Okay. See, what is done?
Okay.
It added those two records in the default partition. Okay. By default, if
Okay.
you want, so if you are trying to search A or B, because but it is not related to either A or B, you can't search these records. So these records are waste. This record is not any purpose. Okay. Even you stored you have stored in your partition table and it went to the default partition, but you can get the name of the default partition. Okay, let's try. Instead of giving B, just I try to check. Okay, same I gave, because this is like a column value, right?
Yeah.
So
And it's nothing but a bad data in the table, right, sir?
bad data, you will say it is going default partition, not I will say
Mm.
bad data.
Uh-huh.
It's coming. So,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
so sometimes you forget, right, which partition I'm loading data. If you forget, and then it will go to the default partition. So that data you can change the partition rename. You can later. Okay, so there is a partition management is there. You can rename the partition. So partition name you can change. That is possible. Okay.
In the column levels, like in the column values, you can
Not
change
for
the.
this, wherever the default is there, it will change to the C partition.
Oh,
Okay,
okay. I understand by the
there
SQL
is a
query. Yeah.
name partition command is there. Okay. Rename partition. So there is a copy partition, rename partition, alter partition, add partition, alter table, add partition, drop partition. Lot of partitions command are there. You can play on the partition.
Okay, I understand. Yeah.
So if this kind of data is inserted, but you don't want to delete it, you say, look, okay, I want to just rename this default one to my C partition. Okay. So it is not giving error, but it is basically you have to do like this: alter table partition. This is a table name. partition, rename to the other partition. Okay, so like if I use this command, so how to change in my case? First of all, my table. Okay, my table is alter table. This is the partition table. Okay, partition clause, and my partition name is, this is like a static, right? So I say value what is this, what source is there, this is the source. Okay, source. Okay, and I should say this is my section, column name is a section, partition column name is section, right? Section, same thing will come here, rename to partition section, in section here. And what you will give here, because you are going to add C partition, because A and B is there, I want to change to C. Okay, it is done. How can you check how many partitions are there?
Yeah, by query, yes.
It is not a query, it is a command. Show partition. Show partition command can show you how many number of partitions are there. Can you see?
Yes.
And now if you query it, see, instead of this one you do, what will come now? No data, right? Because we changed it.
Yeah.
Now I do C section equal to C, right? Now you will get the C. Okay. So if you are trying to add a partition without giving a partition information in the partition table, it will go to the default partition. Okay, because you have not specified any partition name. Okay, but it is not an error. That is one.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, sir.
Okay. Anyone has any question on this part? This dynamic one. Like first is how to do static partition. The second way is table to table. Okay, so I'm creating a one source table, but source table I have a section column, because same like here I'm assuming it, this particular file is a section A, this file is a section B, but I have only one table, so I should have the section column. Otherwise, how can I identify which record is the which section, right? So I'm creating a one source table. I'm creating a table as a source table. Sometimes the problem I told, the single quote, right? Whenever you are copying the copy paste, so you should modify your this single quote. Okay, because this single quote, when you are copying from any website or any Word document, so it will give error. Okay. So now it is created. So the source table you will populate it, right? The source table data is this one. The file name is section.txt, the entire file. But I can know, right? This A is for section A, B is a section B, A is a section A, B is a section B, right? So I'm creating input file here, cat section.txt. Now I will load the data in this source file, because this is a source file data. Okay, so this file you will use simple command, because this is not a partition table, right? This is the non-partition. Load data, local in path, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 1 and your path is this is the location of the files section.txt into table. It is a by default append mode. And what is the table name? Student underscore source 12. Any typo will be there, right? So that will be command will fail. So data is loaded. I can check my source table first. This is not related to partition. Just normally I just load the data. Okay. Student underscore source 1. Okay. So my data is there. But I loaded data. How many records? AB. Time is loaded data. It is the same data repeated YNPL. Okay. So I have 8 records and I have loaded in the source table. Okay. Now I will write my insert into table command. So you can create a new table for partition or otherwise in the same table override it. Okay. So I'm going to create a new table. Just make sure right my table is I'm getting the this way when I'm loading the data. This time it's the same like a static partition, like it's a partition table I'm creating. So I'm creating a partition table. Okay. And the partition column name is a section. Okay. So partition column name is section dot section is my partition table. The next thing is I have to load 2 different commands to load 2 times. But this time I will use insert into table command. So insert into table command is basically loading the data from table to table. So can you see this is my table? This is my partition name. I'm telling A, and I'm saying here student father name percentage from the source table section A. If I don't give this clause, what will happen? What will happen in this case if I'm not giving the partition name? So all the data of the source will go to one partition, right? If all 8 record will go to the A, but I want to say A records, A values record are 4. So 4 will go. Okay. And B will 4 and 4 will go to the another partition. Okay. So how many command I have to write? Again, 2 command I have to write. One for A, one for B. It's running a MapReduce job. Okay, in the background and loading the data. Okay, section A is completed. Now I'm changing to section B. So output will be coming same, right? Just a different way I'm doing. The one way is loading data from the file. The second way I'm loading data from table to source table to target table, partition table. But ultimately the record will be the same. The output will be the same. Okay. So that is not a difference, right? So when I do select star, now this is my partition table. So what is my partition table name? Student 1, 2. underscore stat underscore part where section. You see 4 record is coming. When you do B section, other 4 record is coming. But still, what is the issue you find? Like both are the static only. So what the problem you find, right? What is the limitation here? Can anyone tell what is the limitation with the, that is the reason why we are going for dynamic. So there is some limitation, right? That is the reason we are going for dynamic.
If we have lots of value,
Lots of values for what? For this section. Lots of value for what? Lot of record you are saying? Value of means what? For what value? Lots of value of what?
lots of records, and also if there are lots of values in the row that we are taking partition of.
So if we say like our partition column has repeated values more, right? Different values more. Like here is an example of A and B, but I say there are the 100 sections are there, A1, A2, A3. How many times you have to load that this command? How many times you have to run this insert into table command? This command you run this command 100 times, right? Because 100 times values are there, right, in the table, right? So for that, like you don't want to do that, only one single command will do automatically for 100, not even 100, 1,000, 10,000, 50,000. Okay, you will see that it can do automatically. Just you write a one single insert command and you have a 50,000 in partitions are there, it will divide. Okay, so it will do automatically. So that's the responsibility of hive there in dynamic partition. Static partition, our responsibility. We are loading data manually in partition table, but dynamic partition is doing automatically. So the limitation is when we have large number of different repeated values, we cannot do manually one by one. We can go for dynamic partition. The source table we will use same. Okay, like we are taking a same example. Suppose right now we are doing 2 sections, so 2 insert command we are doing. So if we are using a same source table, I don't create a new source table with the more number of values. So if I say instead of doing 2 time insert, if I run only 1 insert, so that will be solve my purpose, right? Even in the section.txt, you can have 100 section, 50 sections. It is not necessary I should do practical on that, right? If I say, if I have a 2 section here and I'm loading a 2 time insert into, for dynamic case, if I do only one single command without giving A or B, so it will solve my purpose, right? Okay. Even you try for the 10 section, 50 section, it will work. It will work, right? Okay. So I don't want to create a new source file, new source table. I don't want to create. I want to use same as it is. Only thing I want to create new dynamic partition table. Why I'm going to create a new dynamic partition table? I don't want to mix with that other table. Even I can use that table also. So whatever you use is static, but you have to use override so that your old data will be deleted. Okay, but I'm creating a new dynamic table. Okay, so I'm going to create. This is for static. Okay, now I'm going to create one table, dynamic partition. This is the same table as a static, nothing to different I'm doing. Different will come when I will do insert into table command. That is the only difference. Okay, and one is a configuration property. Okay, that I will add. Okay, so first I'm just going to create dynamic partition table. Table is oh, table name is, I copy the wrong name. Actually, dynamic is this. That is the reason it's saying table form. Okay, because table is already created. Dynamic partition. Okay, so this is the dynamic partition table is created. Okay, only thing is, okay, I'll show to you. Oh, I didn't. Actually, if I don't use field terminated by, the problem will come. It will not be able to parse the. So I will drop table. So this is internal table, okay? You know, right? Because I'm not giving any external keyword. 1, 2, underscore, dynas, underscore, part. Okay. So I drop the table. There is no more table. I'm creating a retable again. And this table, I'm not setting this properties. I just try to do insert into table command. Okay. See what it will do. This is a dynamic way. Dynamic way when you are inserting, so just you have to, in the last static one, you are giving the value section equal to, but here you are not giving section because you are dynamically doing. So dynamically means how many different values are there in your column, automatically it will take it. That's the reason we are not giving any static value. And one more thing, remember, when you are doing the select star, this table fields, so last column you keep it your section. Okay, you can't change the sequence. So last column is should be the column name in the source table. Okay, because this last will be implement. Last will understand this is a section and this is a section. Okay, if you try to give the sequence change, right? So it will not do partition properly. Okay, it will not do. So the condition is the last column of your select should be your partition column name. Okay, because source table you have the partition column name. It could be a same column or it could be a different column. It doesn't matter, but it should have the, because it will take the data from this and write the data this, because you are not giving any where clause. You know, when you are giving a where clause, it's not a problem. Anywhere you can keep it a sequence. It it's not having any problem. But if you are not giving any where clause, because dynamic partition, we don't need to give where clause and we don't need to give the partition name because we are not making static, we are making dynamic. But how it will identify if this column is a section is a partition column from the source by last column, it will check the last column value. Okay, so suppose you given the last column is a percentage, so your partition will not be happen properly. Okay, so see, if I'm not enable this property, two property, one is a dynamic partition mode non-strict and one is a dynamic partition 2. If you are not making it enable, so what hive will say you? Okay, because you are trying dynamic partition without enable the dynamic partition property. So what hive will complain? Okay, so what hive will complain when you are trying the dynamic partition without enabling the, so hive is understanding you are trying dynamic partition, but you have not enabled the property. Okay, so see here, what is my source table name? Student underscore source 1 2. Can you see what is the error is coming? At least one, yeah,
same one, yes.
it is saying like either you make it your partition, whatever your query you are giving, okay, insert query, make it as a static. At least one column, make it static, because you are trying dynamic, but you are not giving dynamic. Okay, so either make it static or otherwise enable at least this property, non-strict mode. This property you are giving enabled, even dynamic partition 2 you don't give, it works fine. Okay, so suppose I'm copying these two property and I'm making enable. Even this property is enough also. Now, if I try again the same command, see this one. See my partitions, right? It is now started dynamic partition. So this non-strict property is important. Okay, dynamic partition true you give, it is also fine. But if you don't give, but this property is non-strict property because you are saying no restriction, non-strict. Okay, no restriction. So you want to enable that. So can you see? I have run the command only one time, right? Correct. Now I show you select star from. Okay. So what is the table name here? Dyna underscore part. Okay. So this is my table. Dyna underscore part. Okay. And I'm trying for the section B. It's coming. When I do section A, it's coming. Right. So only one single command has loaded data for both the partitions, right? Correct. For one single command. So dynamic partition is working. So you can try, you can try for the 3 or 4 section A, B, C, D, and you can see even you give 3, 4, 10, 15, 20, 100, it will work. Because I showed you the example for 2 partitions, 2 sections, right? 2 partitions in one single insert command I loaded. Okay. So if I can load for 2 partition in single command, so definitely when you are running for your dynamic partition for 10 section, so that will work also. Okay, that will work because I'm not specifying any column, partition column name and static way I'm not doing. That is the reason I'm not doing any static. Can you see here any static thing is there? Both sides in the source side or target side, no static. But here is a static. Like source side is static and target side also is static. Okay. Okay. So try this example. I will copy paste it. Okay. I will give it. Okay. And try this examples. Okay. And let me know any difficulty. So dynamic and static partition I all completed. Okay. So tomorrow I will start the different file format data like Avro, ORC, Parquet, and Sardis, C-Lite and D-C-Lite. Okay. Okay. Anyone has any question? Okay. I'll share the video and input files, this all data. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.